So today we're going to have the McCracken presentation and then, or discussion or facilitation or whatever it's going to be. And then we're going to talk more about the toolkit and getting started with some of the work we're hoping you can all help with. So McCracken, you are in. And if you go down to the bottom of the screen and just tap on share screen, you should see, or click or whatever, you should see what you need to see. Yay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I was just going to share what we've been doing. We wrote our grant to do 2 10-week sessions at locations outside of the library to go out into the community and do coding clubs with high school and middle school age kids. And we had 2 locations written into the grant. One is the Boys and Girls Club, the Oscar Cross Boys and Girls Club. And the other is Sprocket Makerspace. It's a community makerspace that has just opened in Paducah. So we started in December at Oscar Cross. And I'll tell you more about that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Paducah and McCracken County. Our library is centrally located in Paducah, which is a city of 25,000, and McCracken County has a population of about 65,000, and we have just the 1 branch. So outreach is really something that we have to work at, getting out into the community and reaching all of our population. So that was part of why we wanted to go to some different locations in the community. At Oscar Cross, we started in December and we used CS First curriculum. We started out we learned a lot. We had a lot of technical difficulties at the beginning with Wi-Fi and connectivity. I had in mind right away that I wanted to buy Chromebooks or some kind of devices for outreach through this grant, but they had just purchased a set of Chromebooks at Oscar Cross, so we didn't need to buy Chromebooks. They had their own, but they had just got them and they didn't have their Wi-Fi really worked out to where it was in the whole building, and it was slowing down quite a bit at first. And I think we might have lost some kids because of that. We started out with 12 kids and there weren't that many teens that fit our age group there. That was almost all of them. And throughout, some of them moved away and stopped coming to the center, and some of them just decided they didn't want to do it anymore. We ended up with 3 going all the way through. But the 3 girls that we had that went all the way through really, I think, got a lot out of it. We did the CS First curriculum, which is through Scratch, making video games. And we had done some sort of polling and research on what kids might be interested in terms of coding beforehand, was how we had chosen our 2 themes that we've done. At Oscar Cross, it was video games, and now at Sprocket, it's music. So they made video games in Scratch, and we had a guest programmer from a local company, CSI, Computer Services, Inc., come in and work with the girls as well. And then at the end, we made, each girl made a website to show off their work. So I wanted to just show you those. And we used Thimble for this. And we also had a learning curve there. I thought we had so many problems with logins and them remembering their logins and getting frustrated with password creation and creating accounts at the beginning that I thought we could all use the same account, but apparently with Thimble you can't be logged in on more than 1 device with the same account. Since we only had 3 girls, we got through that. We just did one at a time, and kind of we all worked as a group on each website. And if you haven't looked at Thimble yet, I felt like everybody here is probably already familiar with Scratch and the block coding that is done in Scratch. Thimble is coding with HTML and CSS, and I felt like it was a good transition to kind of use some actual typed code to add to their experience with the block coding. And this is what the creation screen looks like, and it uses the remix language similar to Scratch. So it was kind of a good thing. And we only did this for 2 days, worked on these. They're pretty simple websites. We didn't get into a lot of it, but I thought it was, they seem to enjoy sharing. And they put links to all of their games on each website.
Well, if for some reason we're not seeing the screen, I think it's okay, but just so you know, people aren't seeing that. We're seeing your PowerPoint, but we're not seeing, usually I think you go, but I don't know what's going
on. Let's see. I don't know how to
click
get
on. Yeah.
New share, maybe?
No, well, you could, but I think you could try sharing just that screen. You want to do the share of the web screen. I thought if you click on it, it goes, but I don't know what's going on.
Let's see.
There we are. Now we're seeing it.
This is can you see the thimble screen, or are you still on Scratch? I wanted to show Thimble. It just you have the HTML code on one side and the what your website looks like on the other side, and it auto completes if you type the beginning of a bracket code in HTML, like P. It puts the /P at the end for you. It was fun to use, and we're going to use it again in our next club. Let me figure out how to get back to my PowerPoint here on my screen. Sorry. Oh, these are pictures from Oscar Cross, Kristen from CSI. I don't know if you can see down at the bottom, sometimes there were more adults than kids in the room. Susan, who's my director, was with us, and Kristen was with us sometimes. And then Brian came a couple times to take pictures. So at the end, when we just had the 3 girls, sometimes there were 3 or 4 adults and 3 kids. Our next session, our next coding club that we started was at Sprocket Innovation Hub. And this is a new community makerspace in our community that we're excited to partner with. They have a lot of exciting stuff they're just beginning to get started with. We did purchase Chromebooks for this outreach project, and so we now have a set of 18 Chromebooks that we can use. Working with the staff at Sprocket has been great. They have a great staff, and they have a education director who wrote some curriculum. And I was going to show one of her lesson plans. It's linked here in the PowerPoint, though, so maybe I think it might just be easier just to say it's linked in the PowerPoint if you want to look at it. She pulled some educational objectives that are really cool from CSTA. There's a progressive educational objective sheet that they have online, and that's linked through here too, that has computer science learning objectives. And she wrote these lesson plans based on activities in Scratch that are from the CS First curriculum, but we're not using the CS First videos. We're just teaching them how to use Scratch.
At the Coke plant.
The Coke plant is a historic building that has been rehabbed over the last couple years here in Paducah, and is a great space. There's several new businesses in there, and then there's this community maker space. We have had a couple of guests already, and we still have a few exciting guests that we're going to have come in. Susan is friends with the IT director of the St. Louis Cardinals, and he's going to speak to our group next week about his career and a little bit. And we're doing Scratch creations based on making music and making music displays and videos, but we're also getting to use some of the cool robotics and stuff that they have over there. So we've been able to do a little more over there. And we had a sign up ahead of time. This is all kind of new to us. We don't usually have patrons sign up for programs here at the library, but we needed to know how many were going to sign up and or how many were going to attend, and we had kind of a limited space. So we ended up with a crowd of homeschool students. They're mostly high school age, but they're almost 90% homeschool students. And they're just a different group to work with for me, and they're really all excited about it. Let's see. No, that's not gonna work, sorry. Let me go back. Here's some pictures of their space over there in our group of kids that we're working with now. We have 4 more classes left, and they've made all their Scratch projects, and after next week, we're gonna hear from some computer science professionals and talk about careers in computer science. And then we're gonna build their websites to show off their work. And this group is a little better about having an email and not being intimidated by creating a login. So I think the Thimble will go well with them. They'll just create their own logins, and we shouldn't have any problems with that. And the Wi-Fi over there has been great. There's no problems with that. After our 10-week programs are over, I'm going to do something similar this summer at the library. We have a very busy time at the library. Some of our kids programs drop to 200 kids during the summer at a time. I'm going to do on an off day, not when we're doing our big summer programs, but on an off day, I'm going to do coding camps, 6-week sessions, and I'm going to open it up to some younger kids. When we were at Oscar Cross, we had limited interest from the older kids, but a lot of the 3rd and 4th and 5th graders were really interested, and I think that we might get a good group if we open it up to younger kids. So I'm going to probably do 2 sessions, one for 3rd through 6th, or 3rd through 5th, and then one 6th and up over the summer. And we've have a lot of cool things that we've got through the grant to play with in our programs. We have drop-in programs at our library several times a week. We have a Tuesday Wonder Time where kids can come in and do some sort of learning activity. And we've used our Dash and Dot robots that we got and have used in our coding classes. We've also used it for Wonder Time, and we have Creation Station on Saturdays, which is just from 1 to 4. We have out all these STEM learning and building toys. So we've added a lot of things to that, and we have game night at the library. We had got Code Monkey Island as one of our backup unplugged activities, board game, and we have Bloxels that we can get out during game night. So we've just been able to add a lot to what we're offering throughout the week here at the library already through this grant. So it's really exciting. Does anybody have any questions? I can't see the chat from this screen. Let me try to find the chat again.
So Leah, if you go from a full screen, you should be able to see the chat, and you could pop it out if you're not. But there's been a lot of chat discussion.
Okay.
And Susan's been asking some questions. I'm answering some questions.
Okay. Thank you, Susan.
What's still up there that we haven't answered? Somebody want to speak up or write in that we haven't? Let's see. Somebody's asking if Paula was wondering if you're going to continue to work with the Boys and Girls Club.
I would love to. They just opened a new teen space. They had a ribbon cutting last week, and I've continued to. I feel like we built a relationship with the director over there and the staff, the programming director over there. So I would love to. We don't have anything formal set up, but next school year I definitely want to do something with them.
And then there's a question that I think Susan answered about charging for the maker space with hosting a program, the Boys and Girls Club. I think that says free if it's the library. Oh, what's the age of the Wonder Time program?
We don't turn anybody away. It's a drop-in program, but we advertise it as open to 6 to 14. So anybody who shows up, basically.
Did we miss anything? That's great. thank you. That was awesome. Thank you. It's to have hear about your project and what you've been doing and how it's actually growing. It's not stopping, which is awesome. You're sustaining it and moving it forward in different ways. So that's awesome. And Claudia wants to know, do you have a lot of younger kids that come to the Wonder Time program?
Yeah, I would say that the average participation age is about 10. And we do have some younger appropriate things that we get out. At one program, we had the Ozobot and the Dash and Dot robots out, and we were doing robots, and then there were some 2 and 3 year olds that were wanting to play, so we got out the Caterpillar as well, so they had a robot to play with as well. So we have robots for all ages.
That's great. Great work, as Claudia just said. Thanks for sharing. Thanks, Claudia. Nice to quote you. All right, so thank you. I think we're gonna move on to the next topic, which is more toolkit stuff. And there is now a link in the agenda, and we can put it in the chat for start of the list of working groups based on the forms you sent in last week. And then also, oh yeah, can you stop sharing, Leah? If you,
yes.
Yeah, great, thank you. So on the agenda, there is a link, and Marika or Caitlin or Nikki, can you put it in? Because my computers are working at the moment.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you. So we want to talk about the groups and more about there's 2 tabs. There's the group tab, which is the first one, and then there's group tasks, which is a start of where we're headed and a broad timeline for it. And Nikki, Marika, Caitlin, jump in as we're going through this. But you see what we've done is we've broken things into 4 phases. What we're going to work on starting pretty much now, then going through until mid-May-ish. And we'll add some more specific dates. So these are broad strokes. And then beautifully color-coded in neon shades, the different breakdowns of things that people will be working on in their groups and individually, and then back as a cohort. Charlene, I'll respond to you in a minute in the chat. I know that is the case. So we're going to have people start by looking at the various materials that are available in your group. So based on your age group. So you see on the other list who the age group is. And we also are going to ask one person in each group to lead the group. And that's sort of project management-y kind of work. And we can talk more about that as well. And I'll be getting in touch with people to ask them if they could lead the group. But first is actually looking at all the materials you have that you've worked on either as a part of this project or other projects, lesson plans, some of those ideational resources that we talked about last time, web resources, all different kinds of things, and making sure that you've included them on in the community of practice in the shared materials section. And so getting all your materials inventoried and listed. And then as a group, you're going to review the different materials and think about which age, do they fit your age group? Are they something we want to include in the toolkit? If we want to include it in the toolkit for this age group, you're going to submit a form that we will give you that gives you a chance to write a review written for toolkit users, not for ourselves in this cohort and the core team. So you're going to have a chance to review it. And then you're also going to be looking at what's missing and working with your colleagues, cohort members, your group to fill in any gaps that you might see. So that's the first part, is that really looking at all the resources we have and creating reviews and and finding the gaps in those. And then a lot of the other stuff, and I realize that the inventory really is a green as well. And then a lot of the other work is going to be either reviewing materials that we are working on, the personas and the strategic briefs, or we're going to be asking a few people to actually add content to the strategic briefs. And ultimately, almost everyone is going to probably add to the strategic briefs if you're able. But for the time being, we're going to start, because we need just a few things to start with the beta launch. So we'll ask a few people to do that. So, and then the tagging will come once we have all the resources and have all the materials. So the idea is that you're in your groups week 1, which is up until next Tuesday. You inventory your own stuff and you make sure it's on the COP. Then you start really working with the group. And then I and the other team members will be checking in with you. And we're also going to give you a packet of resources with timelines, etc. Marika, Caitlin, Nikki, those are the big broad strokes. What did I miss, or what do you want to add?
I think you've got it, but I might have missed if you said that the weekly webinars going forward will be work time for the working groups, but we're trying to figure out how to also have a small sharing time so the groups can share with each other. It might be that your group is stuck on something and wants some input from the other groups, or you're looking for a resource or something and want to talk to the other groups. But so we'll be using the next chunk of these webinars specifically for the toolkit working group stuff. And there's obviously more detail to how that will work, that we will be working on while you guys are doing your inventory stuff. We'll be working on that so that it's hopefully crystal clear next Tuesday. And I'm imagining next Tuesday will be a bunch of questions and discussion on the process part of it, right?
Yeah, this is Nikki. I'd like to be very clear on what we're expecting from each library in terms of what materials and what resources and whatnot, just so we don't let anything slip through the cracks if somebody has a great worksheet or a great strategy or whatnot. So maybe our team can get together and outline those things a little more definitively, just so people have a checklist to go off of what to contribute and where. So maybe we can do that in the next 24 hours for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's, Linda, did you mention this packet?
Yeah.
I'm reading the little thing up at the top.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
so
how to do this packet, right?
Yes, exactly. So we will have a packet of, we will have a packet of materials that we will make sure that we'll get out to people. And I think the key, and while we're working on that, is to just go through your own stuff. And even if it doesn't fit with what we need for the toolkit, there might be resources you have that would be just useful to the cohort. So if there's things you've worked on, created, developed, it's even, press releases, anything you've written up, strategies, all that kind of thing. And then we will get you the packet in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so what about cohort members? What are you seeing here that you're wondering about, confused by, think is awesome? I know you're just seeing it.
Linda, in the group tasks, we've got the review, inventory, share, and tag. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason content creation isn't one of the categories?
So I
think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, so we're thinking that once people inventory and share, that they might find that there's not a lot more creation, that the inventorying will give us all these resources, and then we'll see whether or not there's anything that needs to be created from scratch. But there's a lot of stuff that people have already created, so hopefully that will do it.
Except like the strategy briefs, I think those, a lot of people haven't documented those already, or like specific reviews we want people to do. So let's chat about adding in that content creation, and then we can give those lists of make sure that we actually document all of these things.
Right. So in the green under inventory share, it says under strategic briefs, it says cohort members will be individually be asked to create content. So I think we got that covered, at least for that. I'm making that green. What else?
I want to understand this because I think you guys have an idea, and you probably have this idea in your head has gonna work. So I'm trying to see if I understand it correctly. So so you say you're going to review the material available, right, with your age group in mind. Then you're going to, what's the difference between the ideation resource and the material resources?
I can answer. Yeah, I can answer that one. So this was a way to think about all the stuff you guys have been sharing with us and putting those into 2 buckets. And so the material resources are really things that you can directly use. So all the websites, books, lesson plans, that sort of like, what are you using to actually run a program or plan a program? And the ideational resources are more like just stories of your library. So all the blog posts and videos you guys are doing, like for the ALA responses, those could be really interesting for people to see, and that seemed to be important to include in the toolkit, just to give like, what does this program even look like? But it's not like a tool or material that you're directly using in a program. Does that make sense? It was, so those inspirational, ideational stuff, that was a place to make sure that we were sharing your videos and stories.
So instead of like a lesson plan, which is a material, you're thinking that ideational resources will be a video of a kid leading a workshop, for example.
Yeah, if you had something like that.
Okay.
It really was not so much to create more of those. It was just like, oh my gosh, we're seeing that you guys are creating those. How can we make sure those are in the toolkit, even though they might not be thought of as tools? But we know from this project and the last project, sometimes people just want to see what does RtC look like, and that's those like big picture stories.
Yeah, and I think this is why I'd like to have a good checklist for every library to go through, because, for example, every library needs to contribute their lesson plans, their worksheet, whatever they've created for these programs that they think is good to share out with the cohort. Those need to be, or sorry, beyond the cohort in the toolkit, those need to be shared.
Okay.
But not every library will have these ideational resources. So if you have a video that you think would be inspirational to another librarian to, or library staff to see, or if, the blog posts, or if you have a, I don't know, anyway, then those are optional if you have them.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then
are like I think what we always thought going into this, that's more the bucket that we're focusing on right now, for like everybody needs to participate in those.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Just kind of following on what Nikki was saying, is those material resources, that was sort of what we all came into this. A lot of people bought new resources, right, to run programs. We want to make sure to capture those. You guys are creating new resources. We want to make sure to capture those, say how you're using them. That's really the focus. And then those other ideational things are things that are just coming up, and we want to make sure to tag them. But it's not like every library has to be responsible for one, unless you committed to the ALA midwinter blog post or video, and we're including those.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm making, I just added a color. So I'm making this inventory, the first, just like immediate, and then the next is go down, because Charlene just had a good question about all the green things. Do we have to do that now? So no, just what we'd like for the next week is the just inventorying, and we'll get the stuff out to you to make sure you get all of those by the end of this week. That language isn't right, but what else? So there's been a conversation in the team about the division of age groups, and we want to make sure that if you're in, say, elementary, you would be able to think about, oh, well, okay, here's, you know, K to third, but really this is maybe just K, and you could highlight something that way, or this is all K to 3, or this is second grade, or whatever. But breaking it down, does the early elementary group feel comfortable, and everyone else we can talk about too, in having a like K to third grade section. In my head, that sort of is how it makes sense, because I know that a lot of children's librarians and working with young people, you have a large span, and then you break down based on what you know, who they are, etc. Are people in that group comfortable with that? And anyone else can speak to that too.
And I'm gonna throw in something to consider. You don't have to answer it now, but just in terms of your own library, in the way that these age groups are organized, does that make sense for your experiences? I'm just kind of curious on your initial thoughts about how these age groups are broken up. Does this kind of, thinking about that this is meant to be a toolkit / resource, whatever, for any library, will these breakdowns make sense to libraries, broadly speaking?
So wait, Marika, I'm going to say something. We haven't talked about this part.
Okay.
But
no, we didn't. This is off script.
Right, this is off script. I'm not sure, in my head, this is not how the toolkit will necessarily show up. It's just in terms of gathering resources as groups. So,
totally. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Yep,
okay.
Totally. Linda said it better, just in terms of the work.
Right.
Yeah, what Linda said.
You're so good, thank you. Yeah. 2nd through 5th, okay. All right, that's fair enough. Anybody else? Okay. So, and then the other thing I just, wait, I see something. That's really interesting about the preschool family, but does that mean then that family doesn't show up for everybody? I had that question. I wondered, like, if we pull out family separate, or just put it with preschool, does that then mean like middle school or tweens we don't think about family there? Because I suppose that could be another breakdown.
Although it is one of our core concepts, so it should be included in.
It would be the cross-reference, though, right? Like preschool, then family engagement would be one set of activities, and that's another lens we're having people look at and tag for. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think, at least as I'm looking at the group, I sometimes forget that a lot of what we want to try and accomplish is going to be done in the tagging system, I think, right? In terms of how things come up and how they're ultimately organized for people coming in. But I would defer to the preschool experts if it needs to be included as as part of your work group category, right?
Yeah, I'd clarify. There's two separate things. There's the work groups, and then there's, once we go through the actual tagging and filtering, then we really need to be focused on the user experience. And you as a library staff member coming to this, what's helpful to tag and filter things out. And I think that's when we start getting into the tagging it as a family engagement strategy that's appropriate for preschool, tagging it as a family engagement opportunity that's appropriate for teens and things like that. So the working groups don't necessarily need to be what the filters and the tagging is for now. Yeah, so if most of the preschool activities are family engagement activities, then they'll all be tagged with those two things.
So Charlene, asking where to report everything. So when for your own inventory, we're going to have everybody just upload any materials you have. On the community of practice, there's a section that's called shared materials, right? Or a link, we have a Google folder, shared materials. And then, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were going to talk about this today, but for the ultimate database development, I think it might be easier if I don't want to ask people to do double work, because if we upload it all, then it has to be downloaded somewhere and linked to. So I'm wondering if we can just add tabs for each working group in this form, or in this sheet, or we have a sheet that the working groups do to link their activities to a drive.
I think the first part is just getting the materials in the drive, right? And then we go to that step. So just making sure everybody has everything there. Sorry, guys. We're just working it out in our own heads. But I think the first step is to just get the stuff posted, right?
What do you mean? I feel like you guys are like figuring something out, and I'm not sure what is it that
yeah. So we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this, and then that will be part of the packet.
Okay.
There we go. I want to go back to a question Stacy had, I think, just to make sure we answer it, because Stacy has a good question about people who aren't in work groups because they have a different role in their library at this. Stacy, what would you like to do?
Well, my support is doing promotional materials and getting money and support. So if there's anything to like make the point of how we, sort of selling it to the public.
So, right, that to me sounds like a great strategic brief, and I would love to put you on one of those. That would be great to get your expertise there.
But I think that you change it sort of like, I'm sorry.
Let me add one thing to what Caitlin said. It occurs to me too that if you have a team in your library, that the working group representative would be calling on you to help out with the inventory piece of it. So absolutely, if you created promotional flyers or whatever, or you have like a template that you use to reach out to community funders or something, that should, I mean, those are maybe material resources, I'm not sure, a variety, but that would be up to the representative on the work group to come back to you and say, oh, hey, didn't we have a blah, blah, blah?
Right.
And then you would share that and provide it.
I think I'm getting a little bit nervous over here, because suddenly you're shifting the scope of the project, because it was from the beginning about youth and teaching young people computational thinking. That's how I would maybe encourage you to refer to the request for proposals, because now then suddenly you're talking about family engagement, and that was not what we did. So we're talking, or other things, so I'm getting a little confused.
So Juan, you don't have to have done that. It's like if somebody did that, then that could be a resource they provide, right?
Okay.
So your focus was different than Claudia's focus. So then what you provide is different, but DCPL did family engagement, so they have resources for us. So we're not expecting everyone to be able to add all this content, just whatever you have that is related to the work you did and ready to code. We'd love to have it included and whatever, deal with it.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry.
I'm not nervous anymore.
You're welcome.
We don't want to overwhelm you. So Linda, do you see, I think it must be Leah or Susan, I guess, the question about the form? That's something that I think we have to come back with more detail on, but do you want to start with that? We were talking about just that earlier.
Just before this. Where is that?
Oh, sorry. So talking about filling out the reports through that Qualtrics form.
Right.
And
go ahead.
No, I'm asking you to.
I actually think
Caitlin
and Nikki have to talk about that because they have more of that. So Caitlin or Nikki or Caitlin?
I can talk about one piece of that. So just recently, we sort of did an inventory of, okay, what are all of the resources that people have talked about or that were on that initial sheet, right, of tools and resources initially, and then cross-referencing that with, okay, what has been actually reviewed and by whom? And so that is sort of our starter set of what do we have, what do we need? And so that can be something that the groups can use to kind of make progress on figuring out what can I still submit a review of? And we're gonna refine this form so that it's more streamlined, more asking about the content exactly that we can turn into the website content. But maybe Nikki can say more about how the content's being used, but that's one thing at least we'll have is sort of the full list and who we actually already have reviews from and what maybe the working groups can say, oh, we should review these things because I've used them, or just kind of to help orient where we are and what we need.
Yeah, I'd say that this was the beginning of building out the toolkit. And so, like Kate said, we've got a lot of information that has informed where we're going to go, what reviews have been done, what things we need to consider. And so, yes, we can share those reports back. I think my question for the group would be, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter who submitted the review. Could we just do it in a format so that everybody can see?
But just to let people know, though, that their review has been, we have that might people remember, like, oh, I reviewed that back in November. Okay, great. Right. Other people could say, oh, I've been using this for 4 weeks. I just haven't done that. So it just make it a little bit clearer, because it's been a long time now, and I know reviews have been submitted at various points.
Yeah. Does anybody have an objection to sharing those out publicly if we take off who submitted the review?
Yeah, and to be clear, the form I'm actually sharing, Nikki, and you probably could share something differently. Mine is really just what are the names of the resources, who's reviewed them. It doesn't actually have the content, just to make it easy for people to see what they have or have not reviewed. But then there's another level of sharing the content of the reviews.
Okay, well, and you don't need to, if you want to think about it, please feel free to send me an email if you have any concerns about sharing those.
Share away. So we know that this has been a little bit challenging, but we want to keep moving things forward, and we want, once we get you the packet and the form, it'll be great to have some more feedback, but also to just I think we have to jump in and do some of this stuff and then see how it plays out. So I hope you're ready to go for the ride a little bit. Team, anything else before we move into just general kinds of stuff? Marika, Nikki, Caitlin?
I think it's
go
like,
ahead.
I think it's, if I'm trying to, I think if I think about these two, the green things is actually very doable and digestible. It's just a matter of how you're going to work with the team you were assigned and figuring that out. And are you expecting us to figure the process, or how we're going to go through that? Or I guess this is going to be through the checklist, or how are you thinking about us organizing around the ideation resources and material resources process?
So I think when we give you that packet, it'll have some like info on the process and what we need and all that kind of thing. As a group, we're going to have you decide how you actually do the work. Like, do you want to meet on Zoom periodically? Do you want to just, share via email? As long as we get the results, your group can decide the best to manage your work, but we will give you some details about exactly what we want when you turn in when your homework is done. That answer your question, Juan?
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Cool. You're welcome. We're good?
I have a question too. It's maybe one that was already answered, but there's the folder of the cohort shared materials, and then there's the Qualtrics survey thing. What is, I guess, the major difference between those, and when something there and something somewhere else?
That's such a good question, because right now the Google folder where you're uploading materials, that's more like things you guys have created.
Okay.
Right now, that Google form that's asking you about resources, most people that I can see have only reviewed things like books that are published, websites they've used, or a tool they've used, but there haven't yet been reviews of the tools you've created. Does that make sense? And I think that's something we want also, like, oh, tell us a little bit about how you shared this flyer, how'd you use it in a little review or something like that. So I think that's exactly what we'll get clearer about. But right now they're kind of a little bit separate. The tools you created shared in the Google Drive, and then that toolkit list of like what books, what resources externally you have found and used. But I think we want reviews or blurbs about all of them eventually. And that's what I was trying to collapse down in this spreadsheet we'll share, is like, what have people shared that they created? What have people suggested as a resource that they've used, that they found elsewhere? And then what do we have you writing about?
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It makes sense now. So yeah, thank you.
But to the people using the toolkit, right, they'll all be resources, whether you created them or externally. But within this group, that they're kind of, they started as two separate things because you guys created them or you found them.
Okay.
All right. I think this will be clear by next week.
And if it's not, next week we're going to dedicate to helping it become more clear. So,
yeah, definitely. So, are there any general, not toolkit, but just project or anything related questions? One thing I want to say, Marika, then you're on, is don't forget the annual proposal form. We'd love to have people do that. When I looked yesterday, I haven't looked today, we've only had one. Marika, go.
Well, Charlene asked a question about emails for the group, Linda. So maybe we can put them in the spreadsheet?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Okay. So Susan has an ALA question, and I will talk about annual conference a little bit, but I can't remember actually the deadline for the proposals, Linda.
May 1st.
May 1st.
May 1st, 2 weeks.
Okay. Oh, the due date is for the proposal is past the date for the early bird registration. Good point. And I know I go to the conference, so I don't know those due dates, but when is early bird over? Or I can look it up. We'll make that match a little better because I recognize that as a potential issue. The annual proposal, an interactive program. So, oh, I know. So Alexa's asking about the laptop question, and that's something that we, the team, is going to talk about because that's a very good point. I know a lot of your programs are using the technology, so we just need to double check on that too, okay? I think the idea, and this is also off the cuff, but I think the idea is that we want you to be able to highlight something about what you've been doing in your project, and understanding that that a lot of it does have to do with technology. What else could you highlight about it so that the group who comes to your presentation or your workshop or whatever you want to call it, has a chance to really get into the details and to think about, oh, how could I adapt this, or how does this make sense or not make sense in my library, so that it would be a learning session and an experiential session. So I think hands-on might be a bucket way of describing that, but that it's really somehow interactive, a time for people to explore what you're trying to get across. Linda or Nikki or Caitlin, do you want to add to that? And or did I answer the question? Oh, Nikki, I think you might be muted. Nikki?
My headphones stopped working. I would just say if you are coming to annual, please sign up. Consider signing up for a session at the Teaching Theater to share your knowledge, and you can have multiple sessions probably.
Charlene, we do need to give like a timeline, like a homework assignment calendar or whatever. We'll do that because there are a lot of things we're throwing out there. And okay, May 2nd. Yeah, we'll come back to that for you guys.
Yeah, so we could make it like a week before that. Right. So,
I think we were thinking to give you enough time to think of something that you wanted to do. And I wanted to ask, and I'm in general, there may be people who are already coming to annual, but I wanted to point out a couple of other programs for you to consider going to. And what I'll do with that, I think when Linda sends the recording from this session, I'll respond in that email with some other programs that you might want to consider. We do have the workshop that we're going to be talking about the toolkit in. The exact format of that workshop is something that we're working on, but that's Friday at 1:30 to 4, which is the 22nd of June. So that is certainly something that the cohort that you all should be involved in and come to and talk about, because it's really about the toolkit. And then there's a couple of others throughout the weekend that might be of interest. So beyond just doing these sessions at the Google booth.
And looking at what Leah just posted, I was thinking, it's also possible that cohort members could partner up on a session. For some reason, that made me, when you said lots of ideas, it made me think, oh, lots of ideas, maybe people want to work on something together. So that's possible too.
Yep. Yep.
So the interactive, the hands-on is for the ALA proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And go for it, Juan.
I'm
Anything
not going
else?
to
Oh,
annual.
go ahead. Say it again.
I'm not going to annual. So
Maybe we should do something virtually. We could have some cohort members like present virtually, not big screen. Anything else?
okay, I'm going to say something else, but it might open the discussion longer. I know we have a few minutes. I think that when you guys, when we're asked to do these reviews of resources and ideations that are there, one of the problems I've been having is finding the resources there. I don't know if there is a way that we can organize them in a way that are more findable, so that we can get to them, with that review in mind. But I don't know how feasible that is at this point and with the deadline.
So Juan, are you thinking like the folders in the shared resources?
Right, because I think there's so much stuff in there that, or maybe, I don't know, create a starting point or something like that.
We can definitely talk about that and maybe have some strategies in the materials we provide. Is that a wrap? Now that we've blown everybody like the brains. All right, well, thank you for bearing with us as we get all these pieces figured out. And we will, like we said, in the next couple of days, we will send out some more materials, and I will be emailing, asking people to be the lead in today or tomorrow morning at the latest. And then next week, you'll dig into it more. I will not be here next week, but the rest of the team will take charge. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.